All right. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Mr. Neumeister.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your full name for the record?
It's Norbert, Norbert, Brian, I go by Brian, Bryan, Neumeister, Neumeister.
Could you start by describing your educational background, please?
My educational background, well, I graduated from Cal State University Northridge 42 years ago with a degree in political science. From then on, I've been working professionally in photography, totally unrelated, for the past 42 years. And that would also include videography, audio, and a few other different binary-related tasks.
Where do you currently work?
I own USA Forensic.
What is USA Forensic?
USA Forensic is a digital forensics company. We are boutique. We're very small. We work. We have offices in Grosse Pointe Farms, Michigan, and in Phoenix, Arizona. We work with varying types of clients because to us, data is data and it takes no side. So we can be ending up working for prosecution, defense, law enforcement, the Innocence Project. We have a contract with the Department of Defense. We do classified and unclassified work. We've done classified work with various agencies. We've worked with DOJ, and I've worked in 23 countries as a photographer.
What's your title at USA Forensic?
CEO.
Did you also found USA Forensic?
Originally, in around 1990, it was called Skymeister, and that is because of the amount of helicopter photography time I have. About 10 years ago, we changed it to USA Forensic while still doing a lot of the same tasks.
And you described, I think, some of the entities that you work with. What kind of work do you do for those entities that you mentioned?
We do audio forensics, which is clarifying audio, for example, sting operations or audio that may have been picked up on surveillance or any other type of recording, removing background sounds. Video clarification, we do a lot of work with Axon cameras.
I'm just going to object on relevance based on the discussion we had earlier. This experience has absolutely nothing to do with anything.
All right. Do you have an objection to him being moved in as an expert in the field?
Well, she hasn't moved yet. I'm objecting to the relevance of the testimony on the subject matter right now.
I'll overrule the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor. Go ahead, Mr. Neumeister. You can continue.
Where I left off is we do a lot of work with Axon police cameras because they don't really handle low lux levels or low light levels very well. So we clean up. We are beta testers for a program called Input Ace, which is part of the Axon company used by police officers. We clarify their cameras to better see what happened at night, for example, in different scenes. We do the same with surveillance cameras, any kind of camera, cell phone cameras. We also do cell phone forensics, computer forensics, and cell tower forensics, along with photographic forensics.
What types of cases do you work on?
It can be anything from Fortune 500s to it can be anything from a pro per, which is a person that's actually just representing themselves in a smaller case, to a lot of homicide cases, defamation. It can be any kind of case that requires cell phone extractions or computer extractions. Could be money laundering, could be the Department of Defense identifying a voice, that type of thing. Satellite imagery, basically anything with binary information.
Have you been retained as an expert before?
Oh, yes. I would say we average about 150 to 200 cases a year. In the last 4 years, we've done over 600 cases, and that would be in U.S. federal courts, U.S. district courts, various state courts throughout the United States. We just wrapped up a case that was an overseas case, wrapped up yesterday. We do U.S. military court. We have a case coming up in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. So it's really varied. I've done quite a few U.S. district court cases.
Have you testified as an expert in digital forensics before?
Yes. And what people sometimes don't understand is only about 2% of all cases go to trial. So 98% of the time, you're actually just doing the forensic work and giving it to the parties. And as we say, data is data. It really doesn't take a side. We don't have a narrative. So very often it's just providing the data for the attorneys to work with or the parties.
Have you ever been excluded from testifying as an expert regarding any work that you performed?
No, but you have to take into account that sometimes there might be curbs put on what, for example, in this trial, there's certain boundaries. Or if you're working with a pro per or with a attorney that is not very familiar with electronics. And the thing is, again, they teach Latin in law school, not binary. And binary is the universal language these days. So sometimes in the legal system, it's a little bit hard to explain to attorneys what exactly we're doing. So we try to break it down and make that work.
What is digital forensics?
Digital forensics is anything that you are using, like your television set, your cell phone, your computer, anything that runs off of binary information that has coding in it.
How long have you worked in digital forensics?
Well, I actually started off in analog, so it's been 40 some odd years. I started off as a cameraman. My first cameras were film cameras. When I was a kid, my dad was a director of sales and sales service administration for the NBC television network on the West Coast. So I grew up around television cameras. My first cameras were cameras people might not have heard of, Leica, Hasselblad, cameras like that. I trained with some of the best photographers around at the time, William Wallner, Niall Latham, really excellent photographers. And I started shooting videotape from helicopters, and I logged about 14,700 hours of video. And at that time, oddly enough, since we were the only helicopter, a television helicopter, we were the only helicopter in Phoenix. At the time, the sheriff's department did not have a helicopter. The police department did not have a helicopter, nor did Aerovac. So we ended up doubling up being a news crew as well as an air rescue crew. So as far as forensics, analog probably from 1980 to 1990 and digital from 1990 through current.
How'd you get started in it?
Really by osmosis. I started in the production field. I usually don't do that much TV work anymore. I did shoot part of an episode, a program called Planet Earth for the BBC last year. I don't normally do television anymore. It's just 99% forensics. But I got started because very often as working in the helicopter, we'd be asked to work for a police department in a rescue or a chase or whatever the situation might be. And since I'd be videotaping it, they would ask me to break it down frame by frame and analyzing it using what's called a time-based corrector in the day. And so word got out that I could do unusual things because I'm pretty good with machines. And it just ended up, more and more people started calling, and it just became a full-time job.
Have you received any professional certifications in forensics?
Yes, but again, most hackers and people who do interesting work don't have any certifications, because the certification is usually like a week-long course. I've been doing this stuff 42 years. My partner, Matt Erickson, he's actually a
Objection, Your Honor, to the partner who's not testifying to these qualifications on relevance.
Sustained ejection.
Yep. Mr. Neumeister, can you just describe which professional certifications you have received?
For cell phones, Oxygen, which is a program similar to Celebrite. But these are programs that are used by law enforcement and by private parties to extract data from cell phones that has been deleted, or which is critical in a lot of cases, deleted data, or just to what we call image a cell phone. In other words, get every bit of data that's possible on a cell phone. And again, every cell phone is different. The next would be in cell tower forensics.
Are you a member of any professional associations in your field?
Yes, the IEEE, which is the International Engineering Society, and the reason I belong to that is about 40% of the world's white papers on electronics are published through IEEE. So they have a huge database on anything from microwave technology to telephone, transmission technology, anything that I might work with, they might have a white paper on it. Also, with the Audio Engineering Society, AES, I'm a member of that. I lecture to AES. There's a few others, but again, they're just mainly to have a repository of information.
Have you received any honors or awards?
Yes, I've received about 80 honors and awards. I have, for videography, I've got a total of 12 Emmy Award statues, but I've been the principal in 39 Emmy Awards, which means I've written the music for the program, and the program has won the Emmy Award for music, but it was given to the production company, which happens a lot. I've won for Best Editing. I won for Best ACE Editing, which is computer editing. Best Sound. I've won, I've done the music to a piece that won the Golden Lion at the Cannes Film Festival. I've done music to a piece that won the gold at the Calgary Film Festival. I've got a lot of awards from Associated Press and different companies from doing documentaries and news.
Have you published any works in the field of digital forensics?
Yes, and they're mostly articles, about a half dozen of them or so. We don't have much time, and I don't usually do it, but it was basically on most of my work deals around clarifying or authenticating. So it was basically the things I published were on clarification of digital files.
Have you appeared on TV as an expert in digital forensics?
Yes.
Where?
CBS, NBC, ABC, BBC, Discovery Channel, a number of different things.
Any particular examples of things that you've spoken on TV about?
Boston bombings, how the frame averaging was done on that, sort of things like that. Again, we get calls a lot, but I don't speak specifically about cases. I just speak about technology.
Have you given any public lectures in the field of digital forensics?
Yes, we get asked quite often, but due to our schedule, it's a little rough. We do what's called Inns of Court. We speak in front of private investigator groups. We do attorneys continuing legal education. Audio Engineering Society. We try to do a few a year, and that's about what our schedules will allow given our time.
Your Honor, at this point, I'd like to tender Mr. Neumeister as an expert in the field of digital forensics.
Any objection?
No objection,
All
Your
right,
Honor.
so moved.
Mr. Neumeister, turning to the work you've done in this case, what have you done?
I was asked to analyze the photographs of purported injuries to Miss Heard.
And what was the purpose of that analysis?
To authenticate photos or to review and see if they were altered in any way.
What did you analyze to reach your opinions?
Well, I analyzed groups of photos that were submitted by Miss Heard's legal team.
What work did you do to analyze those photographs?
Well, normally you start off by looking at what's called the EXIF data. The EXIF data is the binary data that is encoded into a photograph. It tells you, for example, if the flash fired, what the operating software version was of the cell phone or camera that shot a photo, what type of lens was used, what the f-stop was. There's literally about 1,000 lines of code in the EXIF data on a JPEG photo. So we would start with an EXIF editor or an EXIF viewer. Anything
else that you looked at?
Yes, when we're dealing with RGB cameras, which are red, green, and blue channel cameras, which would be a cell phone or a basic home camera. They're based on RGB channels. We would do four types of scopes. We would do a vector scope. We do a luminance scope. We do a waveform scope, and then what's called an RGB parade. And those scopes analyze different things. The vector scope analyzes where the different types of colors are headed in, for example, it's broken up into reds, magenta, different areas on a scope. We would take a look at that to see if there's anything out of the normal for the type of camera being used. In other words, would there be above a certain percentage of chroma? And chroma means color saturation.
Objection, Your Honor. Outside the scope, we can approach.
All right,
like.
you want to approach?
Mr. Neumeister, based on the analysis you performed in this case, have you formed any opinions?
Pardon?
Based on the analysis you've done in this case, have you formed any opinions?
Yes.
What are they?
Well, three basic ones. One is quite a number of the photos had been through a photo, at least one, possibly two.
Objection, Your Honor. Foundation, which photos is he referring to? We have to go through this one by one.
One's in evidence.
Mr. Neumeister, in terms of the photos that you looked at and that you formed opinions about, do you understand if they've been submitted as evidence in this case?
Yes.
Okay. And what conclusions have you formed about those?
Same objection, Your Honor. That doesn't cure the issue of the objection. We have to go through this. Which photos is she talking about? Which one's in evidence? What exhibit numbers? That's the basis of the
We're
objection.
talking generally about opinions right now, Your Honor, and we're going to get into some specifics.
I think we have to go straight to the specifics.
Okay. Mr. Neumeister, have you prepared a demonstrative that aids in your testimony with respect to any of the photos that you looked at in this case?
Yes.
I'd like to pull up Plaintiff's 1303. Your Honor, if I might approach.
All right.
Your Honor, I would again object. We can approach to discuss
Okay,
it.
you want to approach?
Tom, can we pull up Defendant's Exhibit 170A, which has been admitted into evidence? Mr. Neumeister, does this photo appear to be one that you have analyzed as part of your analysis in this case?
There were many versions of this photo. I would say there were dozens of different versions with different chromatic values, different file sizes, different physical sizes. Some had been through Photos 1 or Photos 3, which are photo editing software programs.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to show Mr. Neumeister's demonstrative, Plaintiff's Exhibit 1303.
All right. Any other objection?
I would object again, Your Honor, because the photograph in 170A is not in evidence.
All right.
The photograph is in evidence. None of the photographs he wishes to show the jury are in evidence.
1303 is in evidence over objection. Not in evidence, I'm sorry, as a demonstrative.
Just as a demonstrative.
I'm sorry.
Can we go to
Publishing
1303, please? And Mr. Neumeister, what does this demonstrative show about the photos that you analyzed?
Well, they appear to be similar. However, if you look below at the file sizes, one on the left is 712 kilobytes. The one in the middle is 489 kilobytes. And the one on the right is 524 kilobytes. Now, what's unusual about that is these photos will not digitally fingerprint with each other. They won't hash. In other words, forensically, they don't match. But the thing is, you could say, well, it was sent through email, maybe it's a different size. The file sizes, for example, would be possibly, you can select the file size, you send a photo, but there's no way to authenticate any photo that was presented in the way the evidence was collected.
And so what conclusions do you draw from that?
Well, this is just three of many of the same type of photos that are all different sizes and have different chromatic, which means color.
Objection, Your Honor. We just had a ruling on this.
All right. Sustained objection.
Mr. Neumeister, stick to your opinions that relate specifically to what you analyzed about the EXIF data, please.
All three of these photos had to go through some type of transformation to change sizes.
We can take that one down. You mentioned Photos 1.5 and Photos 3.0 earlier, I believe.
Photos.
What is that?
Photos 3 and Photos 1.5 are editing programs that Macintosh or Apple put out with their product. It's for editing photos. In other words, you would put a photo in and you would change the colors, or you would crop it, or you would clarify it by enhancing, for example, the sharpening, or you could darken it. But when you save a photo through an editing program, you leave a mark on the EXIF data.
And what is the EXIF data?
The EXIF data is the data that is embedded in a photograph that tells you a lot about the photograph. And again, in the early days when we were using film cameras, you would write down the f-stop, which is the light setting. You would write the type of lens you use, the time of day, the type of film stock, the type of filters you're using. Now with digital cameras, that's done electronically, and there's about 1,000 lines of code, of which 50 are probably important, that tell you what the camera was doing.
So what's the significance of EXIF data in your photo analysis?
Well, in this situation, I can see that normally where the operating system of the camera would be, which means the version that of operating system the phone is running on, it would normally say something like, I'll just throw out an arbitrary number, 9.1.3 operating system for iOS, which is Apple's iPhone operating system. Instead of saying that, it says software Photos 3.0 or Photos 1.0. That means that the photo had to be rendered, which means composited together in an editing program.
Did you prepare a demonstrative that shows some of your analysis of some of the EXIF data of the photos in this case?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Can we pull up 1304, please? Your Honor, may I approach?
You okay?
Permission to publish as a demonstrative, Your Honor.
Any objection? Any objection, Mr.
I'm sorry,
Murphy?
Your Honor. My
She wishes to
co-counsel's
publish
talking. I'm
it
so sorry.
as a demonstrative.
No objections to demonstrative.
All right, thank you. We'll publish it as 1304, just as a demonstrative.
And Mr. Neumeister, are these images in this demonstrative excerpts from the report you prepared in this case?
Yes, they are.
And what do they show?
On this particular photo, and on all of them, it shows the first few lines of EXIF data, the ones that would be most important for this photograph. So, for example, things you would see, the very top line would be the make of phone. It's an Apple iPhone 6. And then the resolution is 72 pixels per inch, 72 to 1. And instead, where it says software on a normal iPhone photo, it would, instead of saying Photos 3, it would say the software version, for example, 9.3.1. And then you've got the date and the time of the photo below that, which is really easy to change in an EXIF editor. And below that, you have things like the like the flash. You've got the exposure type, how long the exposure was. So what you just highlighted there again was the date and time. So that's universal time code minus whatever area you're in the world.
Anything else you want to show us with this demonstrative?
Yeah, just below that, if you look, there's some things that would say, for example, a directly photographed image. That is not going to be necessarily accurate once it's been through an editor. It will always pretty much say that. So when you're looking at scene type or auto exposure, these are things that really don't matter all that much. What would matter is, for example, if you're taking notes, the focal length would be important, the pattern of metering, things like that to a photographer would be important. And again, this is just a few lines, and the reason I put these in there was just to explain a bit what EXIF data is. The actual thing I'm trying to point out is the fact that instead of an operating system, it shows the editing program that was used on this photo.
Are there additional photos that you did this analysis for?
Yes, many.
Can we scroll to the next page, please, Tom? Is there anything about this photo that you noted as part of your analysis, Mr. Neumeister?
Yes, again, it's you know, right there, you've got photos 3.0 on that particular photo. And I think, you know, we pretty much covered what the stuff is, but again, you see the photos 3.0. And again, this could not come out of an iPhone this way. This would go into a computer, be edited and rendered through the photo editor, and this would then be embedded in the EXIF data.
Okay. Do you have other photos in this demonstrative?
Yes.
All right, can we scroll to the next page?
Same thing. You've got up here in the top, you've got the photos 3.0, and this is throughout a lot of the photos that are in evidence, or versions of the photos in evidence, were gone through photos 3.0 or photos 1.5, an earlier version.
Can we scroll to the next page, please, Tom? And what about this one?
Same thing, photos 3.0. And again, in a photo editing app, you can do an awful lot of things. So when you see photos 3.0, first of all, you know it's not anywhere near an original. There's going to be compression artifacts because it's a JPEG file.
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Can we move on to the next page of this demonstrative, please?
And again, same thing. You've got the photos app.
Okay. And I believe there's one final photo in this demonstrative. What about this one?
Again, if you look up there, it says photos 3.0 on that particular photo.
All right. We can take that one down. Your Honor, I have a little bit left. I don't know if you wanted to.
All right, you want to take our afternoon? Let's go ahead and take our afternoon recess. Just do not discuss the case. All right. Okay, you can be seated. Your next question?
Thank you. Mr. Neumeister, do you have another demonstrative prepared that shows a photo with EXIF data reflecting that it was saved in Photos 3?
Correct. Photos 3, yes.
Your Honor, we have a video of these photos, and we're happy to play it once so that counsel can review, if that's all right.
Okay.
All right, we took care of that, Your Honor.
thank you.
May we publish, or would you like to see it?
I'd just like to see it first. Yeah.
Okay. And what's demonstrative is this going to be then?
This is plaintiff's 1305, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Could you play it? There you go.
Subject to Your Honor's ruling, that's not.
All right. So 130 marked as plaintiff's 1305 and used as demonstrative. You can publish to the jury.
Mr. Neumeister, we're going to go ahead and play the demonstrative that you prepared, and then after the jury's had a chance to see it, if you want to explain to them what the demonstrative shows, that would be great.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you publish it? No, this.
So, Mr. Neumeister, what was depicted in that video?
The same photo treated two different ways. One was marked with the original or with the operating system from an iPhone, which is iOS 9.3.1 on that particular photo. The one this is 9.3.1, there is a graphic below indicating it. The second photo is marked Photos 3, and it looks quite a bit different.
And just, Tom, could we pull up defendant 708? Mr. Neumeister, does the image in defendant 708 appear to be similar, same photo as what was depicted in your demonstrative?
Actually it's the Photos 3.0 edit version.
Thank you. We can take that one down, Tom. Mr. Neumeister, have you also formed an opinion about defendants exhibits 712 and 713?
Correct.
Did you prepare a demonstrative that shows?
Your Honor, exhibits 712 and 715 are outside the scope of disclosure.
I can show you if you'd like, Your Honor. All right. Could we pull up plaintiff's exhibit 1306, Tom? And Your Honor, this is another video that, can you pause that, please? This is another video that we prepared. It's not published yet, so I'm happy to play it once through. So that
Play it once through. This is 1306.
I would just request, what exhibits are they? I'm sorry, Your Honor. What exhibits are these that are in this video? It doesn't say. I don't know.
Yeah, I tried to get my question out a moment ago. Defendant 712 and 713, Your Honor.
12 and 713. All right. Okay, 1306 then will be a demonstrative as identified and be published.
And if we could go ahead and play that, please. Tom? And Mr. Neumeister, what's your, what do we see here in this demonstrative?
There's Exhibit 712, I believe you have, I'm not sure the date's number, 712 and 713. They're two separate exhibits, except it's the exact same photograph that's been, one's been edited, one hasn't, or I can't say that one hasn't, but the colors have been modified in an editor.
Objection, Your Honor. Beyond the scope of your ruling, talking about colors, it keeps happening.
Sustain the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Neumeister, did you form an opinion in this case about the authenticity of the photos that you reviewed of Ms. Heard?
Well, first of all, nobody can identify the authenticity of the photos, of any of the photos. Marked photos 3, photos 1, or just marked with the operating system number. And the reason is the manner of collection. So these came from an iTunes backup. Now, what is an iTunes backup?
Objection, Your Honor. I'm sorry. You're beyond the scope of your ruling. EXIF metadata, this keeps happening.
Your Honor, may I approach on this one? So, Mr. Neumeister, without going into the specifics, what's your opinion about the authenticity of the photos you received from Ms. Heard?
Based on the way they were collected, there would be
Objection, Your Honor. We just ruled on this.
I framed my question, I thought, Your Honor, to avoid the issue that you're concerned about. Mr. Neumeister, what's your opinion about the authenticity here?
There's no way for any forensic expert to validate any of these photos.
Thank you very much. No further questions.
Good afternoon, Mr. Neumeister.
Good afternoon.
Your only degree is in political science, correct?
42 years ago, correct.
And you have no degree whatsoever from any academic institution in computer science, correct?
That's correct.
And you have no certifications in computer forensics, correct?
That's correct.
From the opinions you've testified today, you relied on no data except for the embedded EXIF metadata to support those opinions, correct?
Incorrect.
What other data did you rely on for the opinions you've testified to today?
I was trying to explain that you kept it.
What other data did you rely on for the actual opinions you've been able to testify to today besides EXIF metadata?
The type of extraction that was performed? You're asking the question.
For the actual opinions you testified to.
That is what I would use. I would also use vector scopes.
Objection, Your Honor. That was not responsive to my question, Your Honor.
If you want to approach. Sir, you can answer that question.
Pardon?
You can answer the question.
Can you restate the question?
I don't recall a question, Your Honor. We can move on.
Your Honor, maybe we could have the court reporter read it back.
They could redirect.
No. Okay, what was the question, Judy?
I believe the question was, what methodology did I use to make my findings?
Judy's voice has changed. That's...
Sorry.
Is that correct, Judy?
No, I was looking for it in the 7 line.
Okay.
she testified to. So you have a question before that?
That's fine. Okay.
So, when you're analyzing video or photo, in this
Objection to video, Your Honor, that's beyond the scope.
All right, if you could just answer the question, sir.
when you're analyzing a photo, a digital photo, you look at the EXIF data, you use a vector scope, you can use a Pantone chart if that's available, and that should be done, but that's a whole different deal. If I go into that, you'll object to it. So you'd also use a waveform scope, you would use an RGB parade, you can use a histogram, though in this case it's not really all that relevant.
You are not offering any opinions that any photograph in this case was intentionally modified by Ms. Hurd, correct?
I'm just stating the fact that photographs were modified.
But so you are not offering any opinion that any photograph in this case was intentionally modified by Ms. Hurd, correct?
That's correct.
Can you please pull up Exhibit 170A?
Is that defendant's 170?
Defendant's 170, yes, Your Honor. So you offered testimony regarding this photograph during the direct examination, right, Mr. Neumeister? That's a yes or no, sir.
Of a photograph like that, I don't exactly remember the photograph. There's so many different versions of this photograph, but yes, I talked about that particular photograph.
But do you recall being deposed in this matter?
Yes.
You were under oath?
Yes.
And that was on April 6, 2022?
I believe.
Can I approach Your Honor?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So, Mr. Neumeister, if you could please turn to page 76. And when I say pages, those are the little pages in the 4 boxes, not the page at the top. And do you see page 76, line 3? You were asked on April 6, anywhere in your April 1st, 2022 expert disclosure, do you offer any opinions regarding the authenticity or lack of authenticity of the specific photograph produced as ALH 7101? Response, can I refer to my report to see if that specific number is in the report? Yes. Response, not that specific photo. I just grabbed 3 out of the batch. Do you see that?
Yes.
Can you please pull up Exhibit 517, or Defendant's 517?
Thank you.
You are not offering any opinions regarding this specific photograph, right, Mr. Neumeister?
That's correct. My testimony's been limited here.
And you are not offering any opinion that any photograph was visually doctored by Amber, correct?
Not by, I can't put the person who might have done it.
Well, you're not offering an opinion that a photo was visually doctored by anybody, are you?
I'd have to see each photo. There's no way to authenticate any of these photos based on what I received.
So you testified about Photos 3. Do you recall that testimony?
Correct.
Yeah, Photos 3 is a photo editing and photo sorting application, correct?
It's a photo editor and photo sorter, as are a number of editors.
So when you reference Photos 3.0, you never did any independent strike that, Your Honor. So when the software of a photograph in the EXIF metadata says Photos 3.0, that could be just saying that the photo was saved in Photos 3.0, correct?
Unless you looked at a scope of the photos, that would tell you that the parameters of the photo do not meet that of the cell phone that it was taken on.
But the notation Photos 3.0 in the software EXIF metadata, that does not in and of itself mean that the photo was edited in Photos 3.0, correct?
It means that you've recompressed the photo and it will not hash or digitally fingerprint with the original photo.
But it does not mean in and of itself that it was visually edited in any way in Photos 3.0, correct?
Again, it's not the same photo because you're using lossy compression once you save it. So you have changed the photo.
So if you could please turn to page 233 of that transcript. And line 20, do you see question? When it says exit software, okay, Photos 3.0, on to 234. That's just saying it was saved in Photos 3.0, right? Response, saved in 3.0. That's correct. Question, that notation in and of itself does not mean that the photo was edited in 3.0, right? Answer, that's correct. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
A file has not changed visually just because it has been processed through Photos 3.0, correct?
That's incorrect.
Can you look at page 128 of your deposition, please? At the bottom, line 20, question, you see, question, but the file changed visually just because it has been processed through Photos 3.0. Answer, obviously I understand what you're asking. From a technical point, yes, because of the compression. You get down to scopes and artifacts, yes, it has changed. Was it intentionally changed? We don't know. In other words, did somebody save it in there and just save the photo? We don't know. Did I read that correctly?
That's correct. But again, it says here...
That was my question, Mr. Neumeister.
Okay.
So if the EXIF metadata software field lists the software as iOS, you have no reason to dispute that, correct?
Incorrect.
Well, isn't data data? That's what you testified to, right?
It's very simple to modify EXIF data.
Did you find any evidence in this case of actual modification of EXIF metadata?
You can't authenticate any of these photos because of the way they were.
That wasn't my question, Mr. Neumeister. Did you find any evidence of any modification of EXIF metadata of any photograph in this case?
You didn't listen to my answer. My answer is there is no way to know because of the way the files were presented.
So you found no actual evidence of it, correct?
That no one could.
I'm not asking if anyone else could, Mr. Neumeister. I'm asking, did you yourself you found no evidence of any modification of EXIF metadata of any photograph in this case, correct?
Now, I understand trying to control the narrative, but there's no way to answer that scientifically because given the evidence we were given, there is no way to positively or negatively answer that. It's not a question that can be answered.
It is a question, Mr. Neumeister. The question is, did you yourself, you found no affirmative evidence of any modification of software EXIF metadata of any photograph in this case, correct? You found no actual evidence of that, did you?
No one could tell either way because...
I'm not asking about anyone else, Mr. Neumeister. I'm asking about you. Did you found no evidence of that, did you?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
He's not answered what he found, Your Honor.
Overruled.
There's not a way to answer that the way you're asking the question. You have to restate it. You're trying to control
Your Honor, he's
the
not
narrative.
responding to the question.
Could you just answer yes or no, sir, to the question?
It's not a yes or no question.
Did you, yes or no, you found no evidence of EXIF metadata modification of any photograph in this case, correct?
That's incorrect.
Okay. It is your opinion that the metadata of all photographs of purported injuries that Ms. Hurd has identified as her trial exhibits do not indicate that the photographs went through a photo editing application, correct?
Well, first of all, that's not a yes or no question because a lot of the exhibits that you have put up, they're not photographs. They're screen grabs, and they've been changed from a Apple format, which is JPEG, JPEG, to a JPG Microsoft format. So you have actually changed the exemplars. You've changed the data yourselves. We actually ran EXIF data on some of your own examples that you've entered into evidence. They are not photos from an iPhone. Those were edited on a PC.
I'm going to hand up a page from your disclosure. One second, Your Honor.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
So do you see on page 8 of your disclosure, Mr. Neumeister, it states, quote, the metadata of all of the photographs of purported injuries that Ms. Hurd has identified as her trial exhibits do not indicate that the photographs went through a photo editing application. Did I read that correct?
That's correct.
No
But
further,
we're talking
no further
excerpt
questions,
data.
Your Honor.
All right, redirect.
Mr. Neumeister,
Yes.
a moment ago, Mr. Murphy was asking you some questions about your opinion about the trial exhibits that Ms. Hurd has offered in this matter. And he asked you about your opinion that they don't indicate that they've gone through a photo editing application. What can you tell us about that?
Well, first of all, on this last exhibit, it says metadata, not EXIF data. So that's two different things altogether. We're talking EXIF data, and on the report, I put metadata because I was requested to cover meta and EXIF data. So it's taken out of context. The EXIF data is the data based that's embedded in the photo. Metadata can be the file data about the file itself, two different things. So the way the data was collected, it was an iTunes backup is a backup.
Objection, Your Honor. Backups outside the scope of Your Honor's ruling
Thank
beyond
you.
exit metadata.
I think you opened the door on the
Overruled the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor. Go ahead, Brian.
An iTunes backup is only a backup of things that are on an iPhone that have not been deleted. It does not have the critical operating system. It doesn't have any of the files that would validate the path of a photograph in that phone. It does not have a lot of the log files. It does not have the Knowledge C database, which talks about usage of the phone and the patterns of how data was handled. All it is the photos you decided to save, not the photos you deleted. So it's a very limited database. Without the system registry or without the system operating system, there's no way to tell, because it's very easy to modify a photo on a phone and have it just read iOS 9.3.1. But with the actual phone, if you were able to get a hold of the actual phone, and in 95% of all cases we have the actual phones. It doesn't matter if the phones are 10 years old or 20 years old, or I mean, not 20 years old, but 10 years old. The reason is if people have something they want to keep as evidence, they don't throw out their phones. They don't recycle their phones. They save their phones. So people ask how we're doing phones on 13-year-old cases, because people do not throw out evidence. They keep the phone. So in a situation like this, there are no forensic extractions. In fact, the extractions we were provided were backups of iTunes, just exports. So it's third generation, and there is no way to verify the file paths and the history of any single photo that we've looked at.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, sir. You can have a seat in the courtroom, or you're free to